All right, let's do an overview of the builder itself. Now, whether or not you're building a funnel or a website, the builder itself is actually the same. And so we're going to do one video on this that just kind of covers it all. So whether or not you're building a funnel or a website, you can use this video to kind of learn how to actually use the builder. Now, first up, it's important to understand the navigation, how to move around on the builder, what things do. So we're going to start there. So you're going to notice in the upper section here, this light blue section, this is your navigation menu. We're going to go through each one of these steps. Now, first up, you've got the back button here. This is going to take you outside of the builder and back into the platform itself. So it's, once you've created your work and you want to go back over to, navigate to like the CRM or something like that, that's the button that you use there. Next up, you've got the desktop and mobile toggle switches. Now, as you're building a website or a funnel, you need to make sure that you're building it for both desktop users and mobile users. You can understand your customers or your site visitors are going to actually be accessing the site on multiple different devices. Some are going to come on the desktop, some are going to come on mobile devices, and so it's important that you build it for both, right? The actual statistics on mobile is that most people use mobile when they're accessing websites, and so it's important that you have a good-looking mobile website to be able to display for the people accessing it via mobile. So what you want to do is, as you're building, you want to toggle between these two buttons. You've got the desktop button. This is what desktop users are going to see. And then you've also got the mobile version that when you click it, it toggles over to mobile. This is what mobile devices are going to see. So as you're building, sometimes when you put in a headline, it looks really great on desktop, but when you toggle over to mobile, it just takes up the whole page there, right? So you need to go and make some adjustments to what you're creating on the mobile version, okay? Next up, you've got the settings button here. This is where you've got a little sub menu with lots of different settings. You've got SEO metadata, tracking code, custom CSS, background, and typography. SEO metadata, this is the data that shows up in search engines. It also shows up on social media, like when you share a website or a website is found. So you probably shared a link on Facebook or also on LinkedIn in the past, and you've noticed that it automatically pulls in a picture and a title for whatever website that is. This is actually where you can customize that for your users. So over here, once you click on SEO metadata right here, it's going to bring up this menu right over here to your right. You can add a title to your page, a description, keywords that are relevant for the page, who the author is, and also this social image. The social image is really important. You'll notice that when you share a link, it automatically pulls up an image on that page. And usually what it'll do is just find an image on the page if one is not already specified. So this is where you can customize that and make sure that the image you want to show is popping up for your users when they share your link. Right? Now, one quick thing about the SEO metadata is when you are customizing this, every single time you make a change, you want to click this green update metadata button in the lower right-hand corner every single time. Don't click the X out and then save. Go ahead and click that update metadata button, because if you X out after making changes, it's not going to retain the changes that you make. So you want to always click that update metadata button and then click the save button to make sure that your SEO metadata gets saved each and every time. Next up, you've got tracking code. So as you build out your websites, you're obviously going to want to have tracking code, pixels, Google Analytics, things like that onto your website. This is actually where you can add that in. So when you click on tracking code, you've got two options. You've got the header code section, and you've also got the footer code section. So depending on what code you're adding into the site, let's say you're setting up Google Analytics and it says, put this tag into the header section. Well, you're going to click on header section and then pop that code right in here. Now, in other cases, maybe you're using like the chat widget, for example, it says to put that into the footer code. So what you're going to do is click on footer code and it'll bring up that menu for the footer code. This is where you add that code in. Once you're finished, click yes, save, and you should be done there. Next up, you've got the custom CSS. So as if you're working with a designer that knows CSS, you don't have to do CSS. But if they do, if you've got like a designer that says we need to add this CSS to the page, this is where they can add the custom CSS to your individual website or funnel. Now, on top of that, you've got the background settings. So if you want to have a big background image on your page, that's the main one. Or if you want to add in specific typography, this is where you can change it for site-wide. This typography section is actually really, really helpful because, as you're adding things like headlines, it's going to default to whatever the first setting is. So if you want to change your fonts to where every time you add in a paragraph, a headline, or whatnot, and it be a specific font, this is where you can make that change, and then that way you're not having to change it on every single section. So you can go through, just click on the font itself, and then choose from the Google fonts available, and you should be able to save like your headline font and your content font. You can also change the colors right there. Now, on top of that, you've also got the next section, which is pop-ups. So, for example, you might have a button on your page that when you click it, it opens up a pop-up with like a form or something. This is where you can actually edit what people see when the pop-up activates. So you can go through, add rows and elements to that. Next up, you've got the undo button and the redo button. These are super helpful. When you're building out sections, sometimes things get accidentally deleted or whatnot, and it happens to me all the time. And so, you might want to go and undo the step that you created. Just click that undo button and it should take you back. Next up, you've got the preview custom HTML and JavaScript. So once you're building things out, if you want to preview the code and see it all as a whole, you can click that preview button there. Now, on the right-hand side, we've got some other sections here. We've got the section options. We've got the rows options, columns, and elements. So your page is actually made up of sections, rows, columns, and elements. I'm going to explain this in just a moment. So we're going to go ahead and skip this section for right now, and I'm going to finish up the navigation menu, and then we'll start building things out where I'll explain these in depth. Next up, you've got the versions button. So if you've been editing a page and you've got different versions, it can show up there for you to see. And you've got the preview button. What the preview button does is once you start creating your page, you're going to see all these menus on the left and the options for editing your sections. And so maybe you just want to see it blank and like what your users would see. So you click that preview button and it's going to open up a new browser and show you a preview of what your page looks like out there on the web. So this is a really helpful button. I preview my stuff all the time. Then lastly, you've got one of the most important buttons on the navigation menu, and that is the save button. As you're building things out, you want to save on a regular basis because you don't want to lose that work that you created. Then, of course, if you're building a website, you've got the grid here that'll show you all the individual pages that you can jump and toggle through on the builder as well. So that's the navigation menu. Now it's time to actually build some stuff. So your page is made up of sections, rows, columns, and elements. And I'm going to go through each one of these. The first one is section. This is going to be your big section on the page. It's going to go all the way from one side to another. And that's what you do when you click the section, add section. It's going to give you some options on whether or not you want it to be full width, wide, medium, or small. So what I recommend you do is just kind of play with these, see what they look like, see how the sizing is going to be perfect for what you're creating. But you'll notice that once you add in a section here, you've got a menu over here for that specific section. You've got spacing options. You can change the title of that section. You can change like the padding and the margins between it. You can give things a background color. You can give it a shadow. You can give it an actual image behind it. So as you can see, once you add something in the page, there's a menu that shows up on the left-hand side with options to edit that thing that you pulled in. Now, after you've added in a section, you can add in columns. And so you can do like one column, like maybe for like a headline. You can also add in multiple columns. So if you want to have, things on the left and the right-hand side simultaneously, you can do that as well. So your page is going to be made up of these sections, columns, and rows. And then of course you've got elements, which elements are the individual things that make up the page. So things like your headlines, your buttons, your forms, images, videos, all those types of elements you drag into the different sections to start making up your page. So first up, let's just add a headline here. So we've got the top part, maybe we want to add in a headline. So we'll add that in there. And you'll notice that because of our core settings here, our typography, when we add text, it's going to be black. So if we were doing that over a black section, it's automatically going to add that text black. So what you want to do is make sure to change your typography settings if you're doing like a dark background up front. Now, once you add in your headline, notice how you can select it and change it. So you can change your headline, for example. But also when you're inside an element, you've got the menu that changed over here. So notice that every single thing, when you click on it, the menu changes based on what you're clicking on. So it's really helpful when you're adding in a page and you want to edit something like change a font size or something like that. When you click on the specific thing that you're trying to edit, most likely the settings are over here in this submenu for you to make changes to. So for example, if we want to change the size of this headline, here we've got desktop font size, right? Where we can play with the sizing on that. We've also got a mobile font size. This is what it's going to show up on as mobile. So this is where we come in and we've got the mobile section. Well, this is where you can change the font for how it looks on mobile, right? So you can kind of toggle between the two. Now, adding in other elements, you can add all kinds of elements to make up a page. You can add in videos, you can add in forms, images, all kinds of different stuff. And what you got to do is just sort of use kind of the columns, the elements, the rows to make up what page you actually want to create. So on here, what we're going to do is now we need to edit our sections and so forth. So you'll notice that if you want to edit something, you can just click on the individual settings and the menu changes. But for any reason, if you can't click on it, sometimes things, the spacing and the padding and so forth gets tight. You may need to go up here and click on manage, and you can manage your sections, you can manage your rows, you can manage your columns this way, but it just makes sure that it'll list out all the sections and rows and things that you have, and then you just click on it and it will give you access to the menu for that thing. So editing our sections, we can add in padding. So maybe we want to add some padding in and kind of play with the spacing on things. Maybe we want to give things margins, move it around on the page and so forth. All these settings you can play with to make up your page. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to really move things around, customize it the way that you want, and really build out the website that you want to create. So be sure to play with these sections, experiment around. Don't feel like you're going to break things. Just add in some elements that you want to add to your page and start building out a page. You've got lots of options here on the builder to really build the site that you want. So start dragging things in, creating new sections, and build out that site to look exactly how you want it to look on your website. All right. Well, guys, I'll see you in the next video.